Oh
What happened?
oh shit. Okay, you scared me. Oh my
Oh,
god.
oh my God. Did you
Hold
hear
on.
me? You can hear me now, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Was it my voice or something?
That was so stupid. Okay.
That didn't go live, right?
Oh, I mean that's one way of figuring out that, you know, it works.
So it's all good now. You can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you. Chat can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
So Donnie, do you want to
I
introduce yourself?
Oh well. Uh, I'm an anonymous account on Twitter,
Ah,
but some people.
not so
But
anonymous. I mean, I think you're like a
yeah.
lecturer or something.
Well, yeah. I am a lecturer. I'm not working as a lecturer right now. I'm more of a educational guidance counselor.
Okay.
So I have my own firm. So uh, I work with international universities.
So you work with, I'm sorry, what was the last part?
International universities.
Ooh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of recruit students for them.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. And you're based in
Yeah.
Multan, right?
Yes, Multan. Yes,
Okay,
I'm
yes.
in I'm in Lahore right now, though.
Oh, so you're in Lahore right now. So wait, are you at
Yeah.
Mums? Or
No, no. I actually did my chartered accountancy thing from the UK, and I did a postgrad degree from the UK. So all my education is UK based. I never went to college or university in Pakistan.
not in chat, not in Bhutan, Multan.
Yeah.
Not Bhutan. He's in Pakistan right now.
Yeah.
Uh Speaking of which, how are things going in Pakistan? I'm assuming they're going
Uh,
as well as they are in India, which is to say, not great. They're not great.
yeah. Not great at all. Yeah. Well, India has like their own dictator in the form of a so-called democracy. We have our boys, as we like to call them, the
Yeah,
military
the thing with
establishment.
India is that we've never had a military. I mean, we've never had a proper military coup, which kind of is a huge
Yeah.
indictment on India because uh like people often make the comparison that India is degenerating into Pakistan like with the religious fundamentalism. I'm like, that's an indictment on India because Pakistan at least has the excuse of they had like you guys had like 5 military coups or like several dozen
Yeah.
military coups. Like
Yeah.
India never
Exactly.
had that.
Yeah. That's why I believe India is supposed to be doing so much better. I mean, you have had democracy for all these years, and there was consistency, elections happening every 5 years or whatever. So yeah, India doesn't have an excuse.
Yeah, India does not have it. I mean, the thing is like the unfortunately the RSS are completely they are very the only problem is that the RSS are very much persistent bastards. They love like I was talking to an Indian political commentator the other day, and basically, uh, what what they basically said was the BJP makes 5 year plans, and the RSS makes 50 year plans. So now, I mean, what you're seeing in India right now is the RSS's like demonization of Muslims. The next 50 year plan that you're seeing, that you might be able to see, is their demonization of Christians. So now you're actually in Uttar Pradesh. Yeah, Christians aren't safe either. They're like
Mm.
also under attack. So in Uttar Pradesh, which is India's Florida, basically, I'm sure you've heard of it. Uh, in Uttar Pradesh, you have like Christian pastors that are being attacked by like RSS and BJP members. Uh, and Is it really a democracy? Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, RSS 100 Years Project, yeah. It's basically like now they're attacking Christians, especially in the north, right? Um and so that's like India like I've said this before, like even if Congress gets into power again, like you can't like you it's not enough to have Congress in power. You have to like directly combat the RSS. Like you have to make sure that they have no power whatsoever over anyone. And you
How do
have to
you how how do you do that?
I mean, that's why like you just have to build a you have no other choice but to build like a ground level movement, and you have to build like a grassroots movement. There is no other way to combat the RSS other than because that is effectively the RSS is in a sense a grass level, it's a grassroots movement. They are that's in a sense what they are. They're doing outreach right now in the north. There's a in the state of Arunachal Pradesh, which borders like Tibet in China, right? Um, they there's a indigenous religion called Donyi Polo, right? And I think that's the name of the religion. But they're basically what they're doing is they're taking that religion and they're basically telling the local practitioners of that religion, no, you guys are Hindus. You guys are Hindus now, um, and your gods are basically subservient to our gods, and they're also giving them money, right? So they're basically bribing them, and they're also trying to subsume that entire population into like the overall Hindu vote. I mean, the thing is, so here's like a little secret about Hinduism. That's basically what Hinduism is, right? The secret is that it's basically kind of like the Norse slash Greek pantheon of gods, clashing with like local indigenous beliefs. So like if you go to yeah, because if you go to certain areas like in Tamil Nadu, like you'll have gods and deities that no one else worships, or like no one outside of South India worships. So you have like Mariamma, Masani Amma,
Yeah.
uh, Karupusami, Madurai Veeran. Like you have different folk deities that people outside of the region do not worship whatsoever. So that's effectively what it is at its very core. It's just indigenous beliefs clashing with like Vedic beliefs. Yeah, it's the actually this is a great point. Hinduism is kind of like whiteness. It's kind of like the concept of whiteness. Is crazy. But yeah, what's going on in Azad JNK? Because I saw a bunch of
Well,
protests happening there.
yeah, massive protests. There's been a lot of arrests, and the protests are now violent. People, I think they burned police cars, and it's getting violent now. I was under the impression that when I used to talk to my friends, I was under the impression that the Pakistani military is very careful when they deal with the Azad Kashmir region, because Kashmir is a sensitive issue. If something happens there, if people are not happy, then India takes advantage of that, and it's not good for the image of the Pakistani military. So I thought they would not, oppress the people so much that they, go for violent protests. But things are bad right now.
Right.
I was reading some of their demands. Basically, Azad Jammu and Kashmir is not really a province. It's just what they do is they install a government there, so they don't have any provincial rights. They don't really have constitutional rights there. So it's just that place is just there. So they don't have any rights that other
So
excuse me, the other that
so
other
the
provinces
grass is
enjoy.
not greener on the other side. Turns out.
No, it's not. No, it's not. So their demands include like subsidy on wheat and uh, cheap electricity and stuff like that. So what they mean is, and they don't want to be taxed like other provinces because they're not enjoying the same rights. So I understand their point. When they're not enjoying the same constitutional democratic rights, why should they be paying taxes and why should they be charged the same amount for the electricity and other facilities? Because they are not really a province.
Yeah, and they don't have voting rights whatsoever. So when the past election happened in Pakistan, they couldn't vote.
Yeah,
Them
I
and
mean the
Gilgit Baltistan weren't allowed to vote, were they?
yeah, they don't they have their own elections, which is just a farce, really. It's mostly they have a like the AJK, they have a prime minister who's mostly some relative of some general or something. So it's just a farce. There's no real government there. I think the state rules it however they want.
Yeah, so it starts basically so the whole point of the protests that are happening in Azad JNK, AJNK is that uh it's inflation basically. That's what you're getting at. It's the prices of basic goods are going up, and they really and they're being forced to pay basically the same rate as the other provincial Pakistanis for that is am I right in basically saying that?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So yeah, and one of my chatters brings up a good point. In India, it's the opposite. So Kashmiris are allowed to vote in national elections, but they don't have a state assembly. So there is no
Ah,
local government. Basically, once India turned Kashmir into like Jammu and Kashmir to uh into a into a into a union territory, they basically got rid of the local government there, and it's been directly ruled by the center. But no one has they can vote for the prime minister, they can vote for the Lok Sabha elections, they can vote in for the parliament, but they don't have a national assembly, or they don't have like a local assembly to vote for. So
that that's crazy.
yeah, it's the exact opposite in India.
Yeah.
They had
So
autonomous statehood, but after I mean, by the time the BJP took, you know, turned it into a UT, they're right. I mean, they had basically already lost what made them autonomous. The BJP just kind of they went ahead and like ended the farce of whatever autonomy they claimed to have, and they actually made it worse effectively. Yeah, and they also promised to turn it back into a state after a couple months. It's been 5 years since that happened. So yeah, the Supreme Court has given it. Yeah, so basically, in AJ, and I'm assuming the sentiment in AJ and K is like, all right, we'll deal with Pakistan because we'd rather deal with Pakistan rather than India. That's generally the situation, right?
yeah,
It's basically like, okay, at least like we're not dealing with the direct military occupation that India is doing in Kashmir.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Still bad though.
Hold on.
Still very bad though. The problem is people in Pakistan, they don't know anything about the struggles of the people in Gilgit-Baltistan or the AJK. They just go there for their holidays and their vacations. They have no idea about the political prisoners. They don't even know who the political prisoners are, what kind of civil rights movements have been crushed in the past few years. So just it doesn't come up in the national media. It doesn't come up on electronic media. Only some very brave leftist Twitter accounts dare to post some things, but no one really knows about it. So
Wow,
uh,
that sounds very familiar. That sounds very familiar to me. Oh, wait, a bunch of people from the mainland go to that region for vacation, but they don't really know what the people living there are dealing with. I wonder where that's I wonder where that's a problem.
yeah, I know what
Like,
you're trying to. I know what you're trying to do here.
dude, okay, I've said this before. I've said this before on multiple occasions. No, it's not just states oppressing protests. That's not what I'm saying. Like it the point is like Pakistan and India are literally the same country. We're literally the same country. It's like not even funny how like there is a poem there's a Pakistani poet that said like I don't speak Urdu or Hindi, but basically not like it's literally the exact same especially North Indian Pakistan. I've said this before. North Indian Pakistan, like they're goth and emo. It's basically they swear they're different from one another, but to someone like me, it's like you guys are the same people and you're arguing over like like the tiniest of details. It's
I
it's
agree.
it's the same thing. But yeah, like it's the so that's so where do you think the what's happening in Azad JNK? How do you think it's going to escalate? Do you think it's going to escalate any further, or do you think that, you know, do you think some sense is going to somehow some way enter the minds of the Pakistani military and
I don't think
they're
so.
going to
No,
de-escalate it?
I have no hopes from the boys, as we call them. Um,
Isn't it
I
true?
don't
So
think
isn't it true that in Pakistan you have separate lines for both military families, and if you're going to the hospital, like there are separate like lines for the military, and then there are separate lines for the civilians. Basically, like if you're part of the military, you get special treatment in hospitals. Like,
Yes, that's true. And the military also they have their own hospitals. They're called the CMH. They have their own hospitals. And during the COVID pandemic, they refused to treat civilians. Even in very urgent emergency situations, they just would not treat civilians. So people remember that. The media won't talk about it. They tend to forget these things, but we remember how, in such a serious situation, they refuse to treat civilians. And yes, it's. I mean, they have preferential treatment all over the country.
Yeah. And I'm guessing. Someone brought up the Bengalis. I'm assuming. So, what is the overall sentiment in Pakistan with regards to 1971 Operation Searchlight?
Um,
Is
I
it? Is it?
think
I'm assuming it's
now,
not. I'm assuming it's not taught that well in schools. I'm assuming that
not.
yeah.
You know what I learned in school? I learned that India was to blame for whatever happened in 1971, and we learned about Mukti Bahani, the organization which was leading the armed struggle against the Pakistani military from the Bengali side. So that's all we knew. We knew that there was a war and there were some rebels, and they got help from India, and then
So
just they
no mention of
got
genocide
their freedom.
whatsoever.
Not at all. No, no, not at all. That wasn't. There was nothing about that in our school books. So we grew up, and then we got the internet finally, and then we started to talk to people, and there was not enough censorship on the internet back then. There is now, and there will be more censorship on the internet in Pakistan very soon. They have this new. They're making this new constitutional body or something. They want to suppress the freedom of expression a little more.
Of
Anyway,
course.
so we didn't know anything about the genocide, the Bengali genocide. We knew nothing. So we grew up. We talked to people. Uh, I had the privilege to go to the UK and study with many Bengalis, and I talked to them. And then I just keep interacting with them on Twitter. And there are some leftist, progressive people who are writers and journalists in Pakistan who have been speaking up about
I'm
it. Now
assuming.
I think,
So go ahead.
yeah.
No, go ahead.
So now they're after what happened with Imran Khan and how there is a growing hatred against the Pakistani military, which is now like in the mainstream. I mean, a few months ago, maybe
Right.
until 2020, until 2022, only movements like the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement in KP, or maybe some other people in Balochistan, like some just small groups were against the military. But now the PTI, which is arguably the largest political party in Pakistan, now they have this fight against the military.
Yeah. So that's what
Uh,
I. That's so when Imran Khan was like arrested and he was like thrown in jail. I said then and there like, oh, this is like the point of no return basically, like because when the military arrested him, they made the mistake of basically turning him into a martyr. Because Imran Khan was not like a saint to begin with, right? He was like he also sucked. Like it was the military that brought him into power in the first place. Like he power brokered with the military, and that's how he got into power in the first place. But the military messed up by basically arresting him, and now they've effectively turned him into a martyr for the anti-military movement that's happening in Pakistan. And they've turned this guy. That, I find it very ironic that they turned the guy that they originally propped up back in I forgot when Imran Khan was arrested. Sorry, when he was elected. But now they've turned him into like the martyr that he is right now. So do you think like and I said after that like there's going to be like this is it. Like there is after this point after what the military has done with Imran Khan, this is it. Like the anti-military sentiment has just been way too popularized. There is going to be more and more clashes with the civilians and the military. It's going to happen, no question about it. And it is going to come into a it's going to come to a head at some point. Do you see that happening? Like, do you see that sort of escalation between the military and the civilian populace?
yeah, it's bound to happen. I mean, it's happening everywhere. I'm actually more concerned about the terrorism right now
Oh,
because
really? Where is
yeah,
it
the
happening?
mostly in KP and Balochistan, but I think many people are talking about it. The Taliban, they have taken over many areas. So there's this place called Dera Ismail Khan, which is primarily a Saraiki speaking, but also Pashto speaking area. It's in KP, but it's very close to South Punjab, which we call the Saraiki Wasaib.
Mm-hmm.
So they are abducting law enforcement agency personnel. They are attacking the police. They're attacking the army. They're attacking the civilians. So Di Khan is a place which you would assume is safer compared to places like Waziristan, the tribal areas. But Di Khan, I mean, it's so alarming, the situation. So people are some brave journalists are talking about it because you're not allowed to talk about these things. If Taliban are taking over, you just have to keep quiet, or the Pakistani military will not be happy. So you can't talk about it on electronic media. You can't,
Wait, why?
mainstream.
Why is that the case? Why does the Pakistani military not want people to talk about the Taliban? I would imagine that the Pakistani military is not the biggest fan of the TTP. That's the
Yeah,
crazy
they,
part.
yeah. I think they just keep messing up. I mean, sometimes they
Oh,
try to
it's just so it's what you're saying is like it's if you talk about it, it's oh, I get it. So what you're saying is that when they talk about it, it's yeah, it's embarrassing as one of my chatters said. It's basically embarrassing. That's
It is.
basically the reason they don't want to talk about it. I find that crazy though. I find that very crazy that like like they just they're really trying to be like, oh well, no, there's no problem here. This is fine, and then the entire house is burning. Like, I find that crazy. Like, you would imagine, like, I don't know. It just sounds insane that they wouldn't like be interested in actually trying to do anything. I don't know. Oh, by
I
the
mean,
way,
they
yes.
tried.
So chatters, if you
Yeah,
don't know, the Tehrik-i Taliban Pakistan is an offshoot of the Afghan Taliban, and they're worse. They're crazier.
much much worse, I think.
They're far worse than because I mean the Afghan Taliban is running Afghanistan, but whereas like the TTP are just straight up like they believe they genuinely have internalized the idea that the sixth pillar of Islam is misery. Like like that's what they've internalized.
Yeah, they have.
Um
So, if we list the problems the Pakistani military is facing right now, the Taliban threat in KP, the BLA threat, the Baloch Liberation Army, who are ruthless. I mean, I call them terrorists because they kill innocent laborers who go from South Punjab or Punjab just to learn their livelihood. They see their ethnicity and they just kill them. So it is a liberation movement. We can talk about how the Pakistani military messed up and how there's resistance in Balochistan. It's been there for decades, but still, BLA is ruthless.
yeah,
They're
they've
killing.
engaged in acts of
They're
terror.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's
yeah.
inexcusable. Yeah.
So the Pakistani military has to deal with BLA and other organizations in Balochistan. Then they have the Taliban threat in the KP region. Then they have political problems. They have Imran Khan to deal with. So I don't know how they're feeling. I want to know. I really want to know.
Uh they well, at least I'm glad that you know Pakistan's Lord and Savior Shehbaz Sharif is now back in power. I'm sure he's gonna take care of. I'm sure he's gonna solve everything.
He's just a puppet.
Uh, what was his name? Wasn't Anwar Kakar? Wasn't he prime minister before Shehbaz Sharif?
Yeah, he was part of the caretaker setup.
Yeah, so he
Uh,
was part of the caretaker setup before the elections, right?
Yeah, and now he's a senator. I think they rewarded him for his loyalties to the Pakistani military or something.
Amazing, of course. Of course. So you have basically the Baloch movement happening in Balochistan that and they have been pissed at the Pakistani government, rightfully so, for like the past several decades because effectively it is a genocide what the Pakistani government is engaging against the Baloch people. They've been
Yeah,
they've been kidnapping forcibly kidnapping Baloch people not just in Balochistan but like in Punjab and Sindh and all over the country. Uh the pocket, and they've also like the Pashtuns are mad at the Pakistani government because they've been bombed by both the Americans and the Pakistani government, so they're rightfully pissed at the Pakistan government. And now, I mean, AJ&K and Gilgit Baltistan, they don't like the Pakistani government uh,
Yeah.
because they don't have any, they never had rights to begin with. So I guess basically you can effectively say the center of power is within Punjab and Sindh for the most part,
Yeah.
and it's basically been volleying back and forth between it's been volleying back and forth between PMLN and PPP basically, and now like you have you have the mountain, what's his name, Bilawal Bhutto,
Yeah.
who's now in power, and he's now part of the same government as it. Now it's basically merged between PMLN and PPP, both of them now versus PTI.
Yeah. And some other parties have also joined PTI now.
Really, which ones?
Smaller ones, but they are still significant as they represent resistance against the military, like Mahmood Khan Achakzai from Balochistan.
Oh, okay, so
He's a
they're basically like Baloch movements.
yeah,
Okay,
nationalists. Yeah,
Baloch
yeah,
nationalists, right? Okay, and
yeah,
then you also have, I mean, I've always thought that PTI's like base of power was in KPK. It was in KP, right? It was always in.
yeah,
It was always. I mean, Imran Khan is Pashtun. Like the base of power for PTI was always in. So you have the Pashtun movements and the Pashtun the I guess the Pashtun student organizations, the Pashtun rights organizations that have always sided with PTI. Uh,
yeah. What I want to see is the PTI is very center right,
yeah,
and the Pashtun movements, Pashtun nationalists, they're leftists. So I would like to see them aligned and working together, but they don't really do that.
yeah. It is. I mean, it is what it is. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean, like I would have. I mean, I from what I've seen, the Pakistan leftists are not as clownish as the Indian leftists. Because Indian leftists are complete clowns. I'm sorry to say this. The communists in India are complete clowns of the highest order. Um, a great example of this is so I mean I don't know how familiar you are with it. I mean I do want to ask you. So caste does exist in Pakistan, doesn't it? But it's like I'm assuming it does exist in Pakistan because it's a subcontinental country, and there is no subcontinental country in the region that does not have caste, right? Nepal has it,
yeah,
Pakistan has it, India has it. India. The thing with India is that because there's a caste registry, and they're like we actually tabulate the different castes. It's a much more prominent part of politics, right? So we actually do keep that on record 100%. Whereas in Pakistan, what I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that what really is a caste issue has kind of morphed into a sort of religion issue, right? So the caste bigotry that you know that would exist in India, in Pakistan, that actually has like morphed in because a lot of the people that are from religious minorities like Hindus or Christians, they're not well to do. They're already coming from like marginalized castes, right?
that's
And
true.
so basically, so Pakistan has caste. It's just that you don't see it as caste. It's based on religious lines. So the majority of Muslims in Pakistan, they come from either dominant they come from like dominant castes, or they come from upper castes that have converted to Islam or something like that, basically a long time
Yeah.
ago, right? And
Well,
I've I find it funny because in Pakistan, I have seen dudes named like Ahmad Rajput or like Ali Rajput or like
yeah.
I find that hilarious because like it's the same kind of like, I mean, even though your ancestors converted a long time ago, right? Like I find it funny that you still keep the caste name.
Yeah, they do. They're very proud of it.
It's so silly.
And they're also very proud that their ancestors converted.
That's insane. Like that's insane. That's actually insane because like these are the same people that will swear up and down that they're not Indians.
Yeah.
It's the same
You
kind
know,
of brain rot that Indians have.
all the most of the Christians in Pakistan, they're very poor. Like
Right.
they, most of them work as cleaners. So
Bingo.
many of
There it
them.
is.
Yeah, so
There
many
it
of them.
is.
And what we've been told is that when the Christian missionaries came to the subcontinent, so they would target, low caste people with, I don't know what to call it. So
I mean,
the
I guess
people
you
from
could
the
call
lower
them
caste.
Dalits, but like I don't think that's been a thing in like Dalits is like the name that we use in India to refer to the most marginalized caste. I think they're
Yeah,
Dalit Christians in Pakistan, but it's hard to get a read.
yeah. For some reason, they work as cleaners and jobs like that. They're all very impoverished. So yeah,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like it is ultimately a caste problem, but again, like it's just it because it's no longer it's because it is basically morphed into a religious issue. And I'm assuming, and speaking on the religious issue, I'm assuming that Ahmadis do not have any rights in Pakistan. They do not.
they they don't vote. They don't tell anyone they're Ahmadis.
They cannot.
If they want to, yeah, they shouldn't.
It's because there are certain areas in Punjab that I've like not Punjab. I think it was Lahore specifically, right? Where like there were I don't remember what it was. I don't know whether it was like there were gangs looking for Ahmadis or whether it was like these are no go zones for Ahmadis or something like that. Like I was like, what is? I was like, what is going on here? Like, why do you guys hate? Like, not you guys, not all of you guys, obviously, but why is there so much hatred uh towards Ahmadis? I never understood that.
This is a very complex issue, and we might need just another session to cover this topic. But on the caste issue, I would like to say something. Um, in Pakistan, the the Punjabi chauvinists or the ethnic supremacist people would tell you that the Bloch Sardars or the Saraiki Waderas, they keep their people uh, in a bad state and they're to blame for every bad thing that's happening in Balochistan or South Punjab. But the truth is, in the central Punjab or the upper Punjab, it's just a few families who are ruling over politics, and they have there are certain castes like the Arais, the Chattas, the Chaudhries. I could go on and on. Just 10, 12, 20 families they're ruling the politics in Punjab. So there is this caste thing, and when we vote, we tend to vote a certain caste. So when there's this election campaign, people they just vote according to their preferences in terms of the caste of the candidate. So it is very much there, the caste thing.
this is this is the exact same thing as India. This is
Yeah.
exactly like India. Oh, it's the exact same thing. It's literally the same thing. Oh god. Oh god. We India and Pakistan literally bye bye, like literally the same
Yeah,
country. Okay.
like especially in the rural part of Pakistan, it's just the caste. I mean, there's no the candidate. You don't know anything about the candidate. You don't know what he stands for. You don't know what his policies are going to be. You just know his caste,
Yeah, you know his
and that's
cast,
what
and
you
then
vote
that's all
for.
you need to know
Yeah.
because because that's an easy heuristic. Like they're gonna they're gonna care. They're only gonna care about their community. They're only gonna care about their own uh they're only gonna care about their own cast. Like of course. Yeah, yeah. That's actually nuts. We really are the same country.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Um. So basically, and then I'm assuming that yeah. So as far as the and by the way, this is like if this is a completely free form conversation. If you got questions for me, then feel free to like send like ask me. Like this is we're just chilling here.
Mm. Yeah, I just wanted to know a little more about the situation uh, regarding the Elam Tamils.
Oh,
Where's the movement now? Because when we were growing up, the only thing we knew about Sri Lanka is that how you pronounce
yeah, it is
the
Sri Lanka.
country's
Yeah,
name?
yeah, you said it
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So the only thing we knew about Sri Lanka was I remember watching cricket and my dad told me. I think he mispronounced the language. The language is called like Sinhala.
Singhala,
Sinhala.
Singhala. Yeah.
He told me, yeah, he said Sinhali or something. I was like, okay. So that's all I knew. Okay, they speak this language. We knew about the Tamil Tigers from the Pakistan state television. That's all we knew. So we knew
Of
there's
course.
this thing called Tamil Tigers that exists. And then when I was growing up, I remember Dr. Zakir Naik saying that he
Oh,
was defending the Dr. Zakir Naik was trying to defend Muslim fundamentalists and terrorists. So he said we didn't start suicide bombing. It was the Tamil Tigers. They were Hindus. They started it. So that's all the Pakistanis know.
oh,
They know nothing else. So Tamil Tigers bad, evil. Sri Lanka's since what's the language? Sinhala people or Sinhala people or whatever. So that's all we know. We didn't even know that there is a strong Tamil rights movement and there's Tamil people in Sri Lanka. We didn't even know that.
yeah.
So I think it's we are also to blame for that because this is ignorance. We should have tried to learn, but
No,
I mean,
it's
I
not
didn't
your
have it.
fault. No, 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 no. I will say this immediately. It is not your fault that you do not know anything about this country. It is by design that you do not know anything about this country. Is Pakistan on the list? Oh, of course it's on the list. Are you crazy? The list is a reference. So when I do this broadcast all the time, I pull up this list. You've seen the list of different countries that have sold weapons to Sri Lanka. Pakistan is on there, right? Both Pakistan and India are on there. India is significantly worse than Pakistan in this regard. For this, like they're what who is not on the list? You would basically like okay. So where is? So I'll answer your first question. Where's the movement now? Basically, it's a bit hard to explain, but the so currently so Sri Lanka has the second highest military personnel to civilian ratio of any country, and that follows Israel. Right? So Israel is the highest, and then Sri Lanka is the second highest. And basically, so you can basically draw a line, or you can draw like a U-shaped thing, where you cut this basically the southern mainland portions of Sri Lanka with the northeastern coast, right? So the idea is that the beyond the northern coast, the northeastern coast of Sri Lanka are the Tamil dominated regions. And if you go there, they basically despise the Sri Lankan government. They can't openly say that uh they're they can't openly say they hate the Sri Lankan government, obviously, because they'll get arrested, right? But the long story of that is so basically the military occupation of that region is there's every every seventh person in that region. So 1 in 6 people, actually, 1 in 6 people is a military serviceman. They're a security force serviceman. So basically, like roughly 16 to 17% of the population there are military servicemen. And what the Sri Lankan government has been doing since basically the 70s and 80s is they've been carving out portions of the Tamil dominated Northeast and they've been populated because there's an overall program in Sri Lanka called the Mahaweli program, and it's an irrigation development program. So the northeastern parts are like the dry lands, and the excuse that Sri Lanka is giving to everyone is that we're just trying to develop these regions, right? And so what they did is they carved out particular systems for development and irrigation, and two of those systems are directly within the northeastern coasts. So system L is in the northern province, right? That's in what is now Walioya. Well, like we used to call that place Manalare, which is a Tamil name. They've since after repopulating oh yes, I forgot to mention. Sri Lanka is the country with the second highest number of forced disappearances. So over roughly 100,000 people are disappeared. We don't know where they are. 100,000 people are gone. We don't know where they are. Um, they've been kidnapped by the state, and very likely they've been, executed and thrown in a ditch somewhere. We don't know where they are. There are also Sri Lanka is one of the countries with the highest number of mass graves. Like that's how bad it is, right? But you wouldn't know it because like again, everything that you know about Sri Lanka is like, oh, it's a great tourist destination, or you might know them through cricket. That's deliberate. That's by design, right? They do this on purpose, right? They specifically downplay like the they like they use um they use what do you call it? They use tourism and they use cricket as a way of whitewashing their crimes, right? And so if you go to the Northeast, right, they have they have specific areas that are protected by the military. There are certain colonies in the Northeast that are 100% Sinhalese. They're 100% Sinhala, and that's by design because those are those are basically the families of landless peasants that were taken from the south into the northeast to develop those regions. And they specifically, in order to create those colonies, they chased out the Tamils that were living there. They chased out the Muslims that were living there, right? So they chased out everyone that was living there. They shot at people and they killed a bunch of people and they forced them out basically. And they settled Sinhalese people uh, in those particular towns. It's basic. Sri Lanka took a page out of Israel's dictionary. Yes, actually, Israel was again. I don't want to spoil the documentary too much, but like for the most part, like Israel had a huge hand. They had a lot of presence in developing the Mahaweli program, basically. Um, it's the opposite, right? No, what you're seeing in Gaza was lifted from Sri Lanka. So what you're seeing in Gaza with the mass bombings of hospitals and the the straight kinetic warfare that they're engaging, the brutal counterinsurgency that they're engaging in right now, that was lifted from Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka, at least in the modern era, like post 2000, is one of the first countries where you see this kind of like straight, barbarism where uh basically you see this kinetic warfare and you see mass bombings of hospitals and civilians. Now you don't see it as bad in Sri Lanka because or in Tamil Eelam or whatever you want to call that region, basically. You don't see it as much because they didn't have the kind of infrastructure that you see in Gaza right now. Gaza is like the Gaza Strip is very developed. It's a city, right? It's a straight it's city, it's skylines, right? It's the hospitals are very well developed, right? Whereas in that region of Sri Lanka, in Mulivaikal and Mulitiva district, the hospitals that were it's a village. It's very flat. It's very sparsely populated, right? So the other thing is in Gaza, you see like people, it's a naturally densely populated area. Whereas what happened here was that there were places that were not densely populated, but because of the war, there are certain hospitals that became densely populated because they were turned into no fire zones. And so everyone gathered around those no fire zones, which were coincidentally near hospitals. And then the Sri Lankan government started bombing them. So that's what happened in 2009. So you had basically what normally weren't super, densely populated areas, but you had Tamils that were corralled in and they were thrown into these sort of hospitals and they were bombed into oblivion. Um, but yeah, there you have like the best way of describing it is a lot of what you're seeing in Israel right now is quite literally what is happening in Sri Lanka. It's the same thing. It's the safe zones in Rafah. Yeah, that they lifted that directly from Sri Lanka. Well, they're not developed anymore. No, but you know what I mean, right? It's not as easy to see the damage in the Tamil dominated regions of Sri Lanka because a lot of it is just grassland. And a lot of the other thing is like I think we're reaching that point in Gaza now, but in Sri Lanka in Tamil Eelam, you had uh you had makeshift hospitals. Like after Pudukkudiyiruppu was bombed, right? What happened was there was a school in basically a sandbar called Pudumatalan. Like there's a town on a sandbar called Pudumatalan, and they basically set up a makeshift hospital there. And for the rest, like this is like in February 2009. And for until May, for the next few months, All the hospitals are makeshift hospitals. There are no real hospitals that are operating in the no-fire zones. It's just makeshift hospitals for doctors in the entire region that are trying to operate on hundreds of thousands of people at once. That's basically what happened in 2009. And uh like it was gruesome back then, and now basically the situation is, so I think George Galloway, which I don't like that guy for a number of reasons. I don't like him, right? But George Galloway said something that I think was especially wrong in this situation. Um, he said that the insurgency basically died after Sri Lanka killed Prabhakaran and killed the LTTE, right? He's wrong about that. The insurgency hasn't died; it's still going on, because the way you can tell that there's still an insurgency going on is by figuring out what the counterinsurgency measures are, right? Because the two cannot exist without each other, right? If there's a counterinsurgency, then there's an insurgency going on. If there's an insurgency, then there's going to be some level of counterinsurgency going on. That's a basic fact. So the counterinsurgency measures that are happening right now is they're arresting people for commemorating their dead on Mulivaikal, like this time, actually, around this time, next week, they're going to be doing it on Mulivaikal Memorial Day and Mahavir. Um, so that's effectively what they're doing right now. Uh, they're arresting people for commemorating uh, people on those particular days. And so, as a result, them commemorating their dead, them commemorating their families and whatnot, that in and of itself becomes an act of resistance against the government. So, to answer your question, and I know it was a long-winded answer, but the answer to your question is that, like, there's still an insurgency going on against the Sri Lankan government, but the Sri Lankan government, like, the media apparatus doesn't talk about it. The media apparatus doesn't cover it at all. The Sinhalese media, they don't cover it because, again, it's a very inconvenient fact. The Sri Lankan government's MO right now is they're just trying to make it so that they're trying to make it seem like, oh, the war is gone. We've moved past that. We're all peaceful and whatnot, right? Um, but that's not the case, right? You still have the cops arresting Tamils for no reason. You have the cops, like, arresting people that they suspect of being LTTE, torturing them, sexually assaulting them, so on and so forth. So there's still an insurgency going on, but it's happening in the forms of, one, just the protests in and of itself are a form of resistance at this point. The protests of the disappeared is when they're protesting the government and the government's arresting them, the protests themselves are an act of insurgency. Um, the commemorations that they're engaging in, that itself is an act of insurgency against the government. Because now the main form of insurgency that the government is engaging in, the counterinsurgency, is they're trying to rewrite the narrative of what actually happened there. It's not working, thankfully, but that's the now new level of counterinsurgency that they're engaging in. And the insurgency by definition is a resistance against them trying to rewrite the narrative. So that's basically what's happening here. But there's no there's no shot of any armed resistance happening in our, like, at least for a while now. That's not going to happen. So that's effectively what's happening in those areas. A lot of the Elam Tamils right now that are living abroad, um, they're the ones that are kind of and again, it's not to say that the LTTE are saints by any stretch of the measure. I've made that abundantly clear. Like, they are not saints. They have ethnically cleansed Muslims from the north, and it was wrong. And they've killed civilians, they've murdered civilians. Like, again, they have committed acts of terror. 100% they have. So it's not me running defense for the LTTE. This is just me looking objectively at what's actually happening, right? And weirdly enough, a lot of the my takes on Sri Lanka these days has been informed by a Sinhalese journalist, Bashan Abewardena. So it's not a lot of my takes on what's going on right now were informed by a Sinhalese journalist. So it's not like I have a Tamil nationalist take on everything. No, it's this Sinhalese guy that's actually informed me on what's been going on. So There's your answer. It's a long-winded answer, but that's basically what's been happening in Sri Lanka.
So are there like other journalists and civil society members who support the Elam Tamil
You
cause?
cannot do it openly. You cannot. Like there are, but like you cannot do it openly. Like there are like there's outlets like Tamilnet that have been sympathetic to the LTTE, right? There's Tamil Guardian, which is again another news
Yeah,
outlet that are, I mean, they're very obviously sympathetic to the LTTE, but like, can you blame them like for being sympathetic to the LTTE after everything that the Sri Lankan government has done? Like, can you blame them for that? But in Sri Lanka, no, there is nothing that uh you cannot openly like that. So there's a law called the Prevention of Terrorism Act, uh and even having like pictures of your son or your daughter or your family member that fought in the LTTE, that alone is enough to get you arrested by the state. You can get arrested for that just for having it, right? So basically, like after the war, the Sri Lankan government, there's a phenomenon called the white van phenomenon, and these were usually run by the criminal investigation department, the terrorism investigation department. But what they would do is they would go around and they would kidnap people that they would consider to be political opponents, and then they would just disappear them. And it would basically be where like you would never see them again. And it wasn't just Tamils that this happened to, right? It wasn't just Tamils. Like there were Sinhalese journalists that were like Pragit Ekneligoda is a perfect example of this, right? He was investigating the Mahinda Rajapaksa, the president at the time, and Gotabaya Rajapaksa, their usage, the army's usage of chemical weapons in the final stages of the armed conflict period. And for that, he got disappeared by the state. He got white van, and we still don't know where he is. It's very likely he's dead at this point, unfortunately. It sucks. It's very likely he's dead, but that's like it's not like basically there's a level of leeway that you're allowed to talk about like even when the protests were popping off last year, uh in 2022 or 2022 against the Rajapaksa administration, you'll notice that like the protesters, they were basically angry at Rajapaksa not for the war crimes he committed, not for any of that. They were mad at Mahinda Rajapaksa, Gotabaya Rajapaksa for bankrupting Sri Lanka. They were mad at them for that. They were not mad at they were not mad at they were actually not mad at the Rajapaksa family for the war crimes. So they were painting like Rajapaksa as a thief. Rajapaksa is a thief. Rajapaksa is a thief. They didn't point out Rajapaksa is a murderer. He's a war criminal. He's a genocide heir. They never said that. And in fact, when Tamils basically confronted the Sinhalese protesters, basically saying, "Hey, we also have grievances with the Rajapaksa administration. Like they, killed a bunch of us, and they committed a genocide." The Sinhalese protesters and the Muslim protesters where they basically tore up the flyers regarding the Tamil genocide and told the the Tamils to piss off. They told them to leave because they're like, no, like, what do you mean? Like, no, that's they were explicitly demonstrating that they did not have a problem with any of the war crimes they committed.
and
Um,
that's terrible. That's terrible.
yeah. Okay, one of my chatters has a question for you. The Western
Okay.
left sees Imran and PTI as some sort of anti-colonialist bastion and a voice against Western imperialism. Uh, we as South Asian leftists know what the reality of PTI. How do we convey that the Western left is according to you? Yeah, have you seen like a lot of like Westerners like kind of glaze up Imran Khan a little too much? Like
I
that's
have.
yeah, like I okay, so it's a funny thing. So I basically did a Twitter thread on like I was responding to this one really famous, I guess Twitter famous account uh where they were like saying like, oh, this is another arm of American imperialism. Like we have Imran Khan is awesome or whatever. Like, this is what happens. That sort of thing. And I basically responded with like, hey, listen, like, no, Imran Khan wasn't that great. Like there are Pakistani communists that are saying like, what's his name? Ahmad Ali Jan. I
Yeah.
brought up Ahmad Ali Jan's uh I guess essay on Imran Khan and how like he's not a saint and he's like not that great. And I got blocked for that. I got blocked for that. And anyone who liked my tweet, anyone who liked that chain got blocked for that.
Was this person a Pakistani living abroad or something?
I don't know what ethnic group they are. No, it's like
Okay.
they're like in London or something like that. I don't know where they're from,
Okay.
but like they talk about everything. I'm almost positive they're not Pakistani. I'm almost positive they're not from Pakistan.
You just mentioned a British politician, George Galloway.
George, yeah, George Galloway, but that was in the context of
Yeah,
Sri Lanka. Yeah,
he loves Imran Khan. Everyone who's speaking up for Palestinian people, they love Imran Khan. I don't know. Yeah, a lot of Western people they love him. They actually feel like he's a form of resistance or he is the anti-imperialist. They do think that, and yes, they are unaware of what he did. And when he was in power, he assisted the military establishment in committing crimes against minorities, against minority ethnic groups.
Hazaras.
So he was complicit.
Yeah, he was complicit. And the reason that he got thrown out wasn't because like they framed it as like, oh, it's an American coup or something. He was like, oh,
Yeah,
America came in to coup Imran Khan. And it's like, no, he got pit like I forgot the military guy's name. I forgot the general's name. He just ran
Bajwa,
Bajwa. Thank you,
Bajwa.
General Bajwa.
Yeah,
Yeah, Imran Khan just pissed off General Bajwa, and that's what happened. Like Bajwa
yeah,
got pissed off, and they're like, all right, well, we're not helping you anymore.
exactly.
Like they don't realize like the internals of like how that worked. They're like it's very weird. I like I've had to explain to like Western leftists like, yo, listen, LTTE aren't saints. Like, what do you mean? Like they're like I was explaining to them like, hey, like yeah, this is what's happening in Sri Lanka. And they hit me with the, oh yeah, the LTTE, yeah, they're socialists or whatever. And I'm like, about that, they're LTTE are not socialists. They're not really socialists by any stretch of the measure. They're just Tamil nationalists. That's not a thing. So like, is that has that like you've seen? So I mean, what are things that Westerners get wrong about Pakistan? Just whether it be the left, the right, just whatever. I mean, actually, we all know what the right gets wrong about Pakistan,
Hmm.
right?
You mean what the Western leftists get wrong about
Yeah,
Pakistan?
basically, yeah.
Nowadays, just the Imran Khan situation.
Yeah, they're
they,
basically
they,
they're hyping
yeah,
Imran Khan way too much, basically.
yeah, they are. You know, there's this Pakistani journalist called Asad Ali Tur. He was behind
Yes,
bars just a while ago. He's a small time journalist, a blogger. So
yes.
I was listening to him today, and he said that the strengths of the Pakistani military were like propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they were good at.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem now is that the PTI and the Imran Khan phenomenon, they have gotten better at it. So this is the problem. This they are beating the state propaganda. This party is all about propaganda, to be honest. Imran Khan and his political party, they're all about propaganda. And maybe that's why the Westerners are getting, uh, they're supporting them so much.
I thought Imran Khan was ousted by, okay, Chatter's like, I thought Imran Khan was ousted by US pressure, though. Ryan Grimm's reporting like this. No, he wasn't. He was not. He was not. Like it's a false correlation that Ryan Grimm made, basically. What like I'm sure you know who Ryan Grimm is at this point, right?
No, I
Okay, never
don't.
mind, never mind. Don't worry about it then. Um
Okay.
no, like he wasn't like he wasn't cooed by the US basically. It was just it was an internal dispute that he had with General Bajwa, and then Bajwa was basically more than willing to provide his support for the vote of no confidence. That's basically it.
Yeah,
It was like
it was bound to happen.
it was going to happen because uh Imran Khan was getting I guess too greedy in a sense.
Yeah.
So like yeah, it's saying it's just not true that uh it's just not true that he was cooed by the US. It's just not true. And like the way you can tell that like you can say that this is legit is like Taimur Rahman and Amar Ali Jan is saying like because they're the first. If the U.S. is involved in a coup in Pakistan, they would be the first ones to be like, okay, yeah, the U.S. is involved. They would literally, they're communists. They would be the first one to be like, oh, the U.S. is actually involved in this coup. They would be the first ones to sound the alarm. But even they
That's
were
true.
like, even Taimur Rahman was like, okay, well, listen, hold on a second, hold on, like there's a lot more to this than you realize, right? He failed to like Imran Khan did all of these, he was complicit in the military. He was, he did all these bad things. There's the military was ready to do it and the US looked the other way. I like guys, like again, the you're centering the US in a conversation where it's not about the US. That's the thing. That's the thing that you guys are not understanding. This conversation isn't about the US. Like yeah, the US has collaborated with Pakistan on multiple occasions and like for example, the US basically they helped Pakistan commit the genocide of the Bengalis. Like that's what the US actually did. Yahya Khan was a US backed dictator, a military dictator. So there were times that the US directly was involved in Pakistani affairs, but this is not one of those conversations. This is not one of those times. It just happens to be very convenient. That's it.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, the US doesn't care either way. Like the US was pretty much fine with Imran Khan. Like it's just like the Imran Khan has said a couple of things like that were like, "Oh, why should we, fund like the weird thing is like a lot of people are framing it as like, "Oh, they got rid of Imran Khan because he didn't want to send weapons to Ukraine or something like that." And it's like, "No, there's a really like that you think that's like like there's a lot more to Pakistani politics than just like whether they choose to send weapons to Ukraine or not or something. Like it's nonsense. I think the US is done
I'm
with
not.
Pakistan as soon as they left Afghanistan. No, I don't think they're done with Pakistan. Like like Pakistan is a client in the sense that they are literally a client. Like they're a client of the United States. Like they do business with the United States and it and also the Pakistan government has done things that the US government does not approve of, like the deportation of the 1.7 million Afghans. Like
Yeah.
like they did not approve of that and they still did. The US government did not approve of that and the Pakistani government still deported them because so what is the reason? What is the main reason why they deported those Afghans in the first place though?
Um,
There has to be
Racism.
I've heard that they're a burden. I've heard excuses like, "Oh, they're a burden on the economy" or something like, which is nonsense, right?
Yeah, it's nonsense.
It's nonsense. That's not true, right? So, like, what is the military's calculus for doing that?
I think if they wanted to send them back there, I mean, they didn't develop a mechanism. They just sent them all back at once, like in a crazy manner. If you want to send people back, you make a plan. You develop some plan and you try and implement it over time. So there was no policy. There was no debate in the part. I don't think there was a debate in the parliament, and they just did it. And I think they did it because well, one excuse was terrorism. So they said there's a lot of undocumented people, but what I think genuinely is just anti-Pashtun sentiment in Punjab. It's just and Sindh. I just see it as racism and discrimination. You can't just send old people and children uh, back to a dangerous place where you don't know what's going to happen to them. They don't have a place to live, and it's just inhumane.
Yeah,
I think it's just pure racism.
it is absolutely pure racism. So speaking of racism, I want to go back to the Pakistani Punjabis for a second.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, my
So
favorite
actually,
topic.
why don't you go ahead and I've actually been wanting to talk about this on stream. So why don't you go ahead and like tell so what is Saraiki Wasaib? What is that? Because I think that's a topic that doesn't get that much coverage.
So yeah, I'm from Multan, which is one of the oldest cities in the region, and Multan and some other cities nearby. They were so this region, the Multan region, was never a part of Punjab historically, never. So until the British came and they kind of forcefully made Multan and other cities part of Punjab. This happened after the Ranjit Singh attacks.
Hmm.
So Multan used to be a province in the Mughal times, and it's been pretty much it has had its own identity for thousands of years. So now it's part of Punjab, and we don't really identify as Punjabis because we were never historically part of Punjab. We don't speak the same language. Yes, as time goes by, languages evolve, and there's mutual. These languages are mutually intelligible. There's similar vocabulary, similar grammar. So my language, which I call Saraiki, it it was called Multani at some point. So there's this place called Bahawalpur near Multan and Dera Ghazi Khan and Dera Ismail Khan. So the dialect spoken in Dera Ghazi Khan, for example, would be called Derewal. The dialect spoken in uh, the state of Bahawalpur would be called Riyasti, and the dialect spoken in Multan would be called Multani. So in the 1960s, all these people decided that we would call this language Saraiki. Instead of having these different versions, we would call this Saraiki. And after the 1960s, there was this political movement based on the language as well. Also, it's not just about the language or the identity. It's also about the oppression. Because my part, I don't like to call it South Punjab, but it is South Punjab technically. So I
I
like to
mean,
call
it's
it
the same
Saraiki
thing
Wasaib.
with it's the same thing with Elam. It's I mean, I don't like calling it Sri Lanka, but it is. Like that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, exactly. So since the 1960s, there's this movement started of having a separate province, which would be called either the Saraiki province or Saraikistan or anything, to be honest. We just want a province. So the ethnic supremacist chauvinist Punjabis, they tell us that no, you don't have a separate language. Saraiki is nothing. It's just a dialect of Punjabi. Punjabi is a superior language. And what they use against us, they say that we are actually settlers. We are Baloch settlers who just came to Punjab and we have taken over Punjabi land. And so they would call me Baloch, and I'm not Baloch.
That's
So they
insane.
would, yeah.
I've
So
seen
the thing,
people call you Zionists. I've I've
yeah,
seen people call Saraiki Zionists,
yeah,
which
they
is the
do.
most insane thing.
And also, I mean, our part of Punjab, again, I'm calling it Punjab, I really don't want to. Our part of Punjab, the multi-dimensional poverty is twice as high as the rest of Punjab. It's a very poor region. I mean, you look at any indicators, you look at children out of school, we have more children out of school. You look at education, you look at literacy rate, hospitals, health, everything is much worse than places like Lahore, Faisalabad, or Gujranwala, the upper Punjab, the north side. So we have been, you know, exploited despite the fact that we produce the highest cotton, wheat, and other crops, and hardworking people. Mangoes, we produce a vast quantity of mangoes. So it's an agricultural region, but uh, I mean, we don't get the fair share that we deserve from the budget. So everything goes to Lahore. They spend billions on roads in Lahore, but they won't, establish a new university in our region. And there's never been an armed struggle. There's never been a lot of protests, but in people in my region now, they're starting to really hate the military and hate uh, you know the central government that's been run from Lahore and Islamabad. So the young Saraiki people they are standing up for their rights. They are forming student unions. They are much more aware than the previous generations, and I feel like, and also there's this problem. I just mentioned Bahawalpur. So near Bahawalpur, there's this desert called Cholistan. The military establishment is actually now, uh, they taking over land there. They're trying to, I don't know. I mean, they're into real estate. We know that, but they are just,
Yeah, they're
you
the
know,
largest. They're the biggest landlords in Pakistan. The military
yeah,
is.
they are. So now in the Saraiki people, there's this sentiment against the military establishment as well, also against the Punjabi leaders. And there's the thing is we just want our own province and we want autonomy. And I don't see it happening very soon, but yeah. Also, this new wave of racism against the Saraikis, like you mentioned, they've been calling us Zionists. So there's this new. I don't know. I thought they were a bunch of trolls, but now I think they're backed by someone. There's this group called the PNF, the Punjab Nationalist Forum, and I see, yeah, when I see these people with PNF in their Twitter bios, I see that a lot of Indian Punjabis are following them for some reason. A lot of, I don't know, people from Canada and
Oh,
all
I
these
okay, I
people.
can explain that because so the dynamics for Punjabis are different in India because Punjabis are actually, I mean, you've probably heard of the Khalistan movement. Oh, I was just talking about it
Yeah,
before. So, but Punjabis in India are oppressed by the government. So,
I know. Yeah,
yeah, so it's the dynamics are a bit different, but a lot of Punjabis on the Indian side don't know that Punjabis in Pakistan are the dominant group, and they don't realize that. So
yeah,
they're
exactly.
just like, oh, Punjabi, 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 you know. So they don't know, they don't realize the dynamics are different, right? So a lot of Punjabis in India
Yeah,
don't know that like Pakistani Punjabis are basically the equivalent of like either Gujaratis or UP Walas. Like they don't understand that.
yeah.
Uh,
Look, I love Punjabis, right? I love Indian Punjabis. I love Punjabi music. I love the language. I love the people. But these certain elements, these ethnic supremacist, racist, feminists in Pakistan. I mean, I also have problems with, like, Amar Ali Jan is like a friend. I mean, I hung out with him. I supported his campaign and all, but I have this against the. I mean, I have this concern that the Punjabi progressives they don't listen to us enough. The Saraikis they don't. I don't think they support us as we would want them to, and we don't really, trust them. So we have concerns about that as well. I mean, we would want them to uh, stand with us.
yeah, I
So
mean, I
also
feel
the
like if the, but yeah, I feel like if I feel like if Punjabi progressives stood with Saraikis a lot more than you could then, because like again, like it's you can't like you it's just your duty as a progressive to do that, and like you can't just be progressive for Punjabi. You have to like you have to help everyone, and you have to be intersectional in your beliefs. So you can't just be like, oh
yeah,
well, I'm, we want we want we want an end to the military regime, or we want all these good things, but screw the Saraikis. Like you can't be like that, right? Um,
and I commend them. I commend Punjabi progressives for talking about Baloch rights, and I commend them for talking about enforced disappearances, which is a very dangerous thing in Pakistan. I mean, my friends tell me not to talk about it, not to tweet about it, not to like tweets about it. The enforced disappearances. I mean, there's been cases. The military establishment they don't want you to talk about it. They're very serious about this issue. That is their red line. So there's this woman from Karachi, Sabine Mahmood. She was killed by terrorists hired by I don't know who. So she was really looking into the enforced disappearances. So I commend progressive Punjabis who are brave enough to talk about these issues, but I think the Saraiki movement needs more support from progressive Punjabis for sure.
yeah. If I ever have a Marali John, then I'll probably raise it with him, and I'll probably be like, hey, what do you think of Saraiki Wasaib? What do you think of
Yeah, I mean he has voiced his support, but I feel like it's not enough.
right? You
Yeah,
have to like I guess work with more Saraikis in order to
yeah.
to get that going.
He even visited Multan and other regions of the Saraiki Wasaib, but the thing is, the Saraiki Wasaib, the South Punjab region, it's not very politically charged.
Is not.
people, it's not, because they are so poor. They don't have enough food on the table. They are just, I don't know. There are many reasons for that. I would like to see more, activity politically and more protests, but I don't see it right now. Also, our politicians, our representatives, the political representatives that we have, they also stab us in the back. They say that they're going to fight for our rights and they're going to go to the parliament and talk about the province, and they just disappear and they don't even come back. They just live in Islamabad.
So I got two questions from the chat. So how much is this? How much of this is a result of Urdu imposition during the initial days? Does it like build a sense of loss among the rural Punjabis? Is that part of the reason you see this resurgence in Punjabi nationalists? Uh,
Yes, probably yes, because now they do talk about it. They do talk about how Urdu has been imposed since the first day, and how they do feel like Punjabi language and culture suffered as a result. So yeah, that is one reason why they feel like that. But I don't really see it though. I think the Punjabis still enjoyed, privilege and positions in the government. I mean, as of 2001, I think this was a report from the ISPR, the media wing of the Pakistani army. More than two-thirds of the army personnel was Punjabi as of 2001. They're
Jesus
trying to
Christ.
make it more, yeah, they're trying to make it more diverse and all, but I mean, if if they wanted to, they would have worked for the promotion of the Punjabi culture and language. If I mean they didn't, it's their fault. No Urdu speaking community was stopping them. I mean, you're the majority, you're the biggest province, millions and millions of people. I
Weren't
mean,
a lot of the people that were imposing Urdu on everyone else Punjabi in the first place?
exactly.
Yeah, like weren't a lot of the people imposing Urdu on everyone else Punjabi to begin with? Like
Yeah,
it was like the Punjabi military establishment, or it was like the Punjabi, establishment that was imposing Urdu on like Sindhis and
yeah.
Balochis and Pashtuns and stuff.
I mean, I if Punjabis try to act as a victim in this country, I'm sorry.
No, like yeah, I this is why like okay, this is the one thing I think India edges out Pakistan in. India has not been successful with Hindi imposition in the same way that Pakistan has been successful with Urdu imposition. Like we've
Yeah,
just not been like Tamils and the rest of the South Indians and Bengal, but especially the Tamils. Like Tamils get very nationalistic about the language. Like do not sometimes it veers off into like funny territory where like sometimes like there are people that say like there's a saying that basically is like when the earth was forming, when the rocks were forming, that was when the Tamil language was forming. Like we just sometimes get very nationalistic about the language, right?
yeah,
But it's ironically that like to an extent crazy nationalism that actually stopped this, because if they hadn't done that, if they hadn't seen, because Hindi imposition ultimately at its core is again it is a cultural imposition of a certain group of people, the North Indian Brahmins, right? That's effectively like their
yeah,
cultural imposition, right? So if the Tamils in Tamil Nadu didn't see that coming and they were just and they didn't do anything about it, then India might have been more fucked up than what it
yeah.
was earlier. Than it would have been than it is now actually, because that's where I'm like, okay, maybe India, we kind of won this one. But
Yeah, yeah, you have.
the other thing is so another chatter of mine asked about like what is China's influence in Pakistan like? What do non-Pakistanis get wrong about it?
Hmm. Well, there is certainly a lot of influence, especially after the CPEC thing.
Right.
And but I think they're kind of pissed off at the Pakistani establishment. I mean, their engineers get killed, their workers get killed all the time in Gwadar and other places, and there's money problems. So I don't. I think they just look at Pakistan. And they're like, I mean, it's not going anywhere, and they're also. I don't think they care enough. They're just doing their own thing. There is influence, yes. There's Chinese loans and all the CPEC, but I think they're just taking their own course.
So it's not as
Maybe,
like
maybe, yeah.
it's just not like as influential as you think it is, as people think it is.
Not really. I think the Westerners are more paranoid about it. Pakistan is, I mean, it's really bad here. The economy, the inflation. Pakistan is done. I mean, I don't know how it will survive.
Well, I mean, let me put it this way. I feel like I mean, just be thankful you're not Sri Lanka. So
Okay.
just be thankful you're not Sri Lanka.
Well, after talking to you today, Sri Lanka sounds much worse.
Oh yeah, I've said this before. Like Sri Lanka is the Israel of South Asia, no question about it. Like I after looking into it and actually like talking to experts and whatnot, like I've come to the straight conclusion like no, there's a lot of like horrifying stuff that happened on the island and that's happening on the island right now. Like this is just it's nuts. But I did see like in Pakistan that there's I saw this one viral video where there's a guy that was basically saying, well, now maybe let me see if I can't pull it up. Um Pakistani dude Modi. I want to see what this guy says. Because the inflation is so bad in Pakistan. Yeah, the inflation is so bad in Pakistan that you have some people that are like, okay, maybe we can have Modi in, like, come and fix this problem. And it's like, well, obviously Modi's not the guy you want, but like
Yeah,
Modi, you don't want Modi, but like, is that bad? It's like so bad in Pakistan. Like people are struggling to put food on the table. Uh,
yeah.
that they're willing to be like, all right, maybe we can take our chances with Modi or something.
Maybe we can. I don't know. We're that desperate.
Jesus, is that bad?
It is.
Oh my god,
I
that's
mean,
actually bad.
I'm privileged, right? I have everything, but people are really struggling. I can see it.
Jesus Christ, man, my heart goes out to them. Holy shit, that's I can't imagine. So like, so I'm guessing it's largely the economics of Pakistan right now is largely due to the IMF loans, and the IMF
Yeah,
basically is basically the International Monetary Fund holding the purse strings of the Pakistani government. That's basically it.
yeah, and as a result of those IMF deals, obviously prices go up, and the problem is the ruling class, this and the industrialists and the rich people, they still get this. They still get the subsidies. They're subsidized, so they enjoy all the privileges, and the burden is all on poor people. So it doesn't affect them, the rich people, the industrialists, and the military establishment. And it's just the poor people who suffer. Prices of the commodities go up, indirect taxation goes up, and it's the poor people that suffer.
Yeah, and every time they take a loan, the government has to do quantitative easing. Like that's the
Yeah,
only like the Pakistan doesn't have any choice.
yeah.
So wait, I wanted to ask you another question. So how does how does CPEC affect the how does CPEC affect Balochistan? Because I'm pretty sure like from what I've read on what CPEC is doing in Balochistan, it's actually like the engineers and the workers from China are actually displacing the local Baloch workers in Gwadar, right? Um, so that's basically like what's from what I understand, like that's really what's happening. So in a sense, what CPEC is doing is it's actually harming the local Baloch working population by importing, basically by having basically the construction that is happening in Gwadar is that wealth is actually being siphoned back to China rather than like staying with the local population.
That's true. That's exactly true. Pakistani engineers weren't allowed. If I mean, only semi-skilled or unskilled Pakistani workers would be allowed. I don't know, as drivers or maybe cleaners and other positions. But I don't think at senior management level or the technical staff, they're all Chinese, and yes, that's why they get attacked. The Chinese engineers and senior management, they get attacked. So yes, you are right about that.
Yeah, it's because like effectively it's not I mean obviously it's not as bad as the US bombing KPK obviously, but it's not a desirable outcome either for Pakistan where basically their neighbor is exploiting them. They're effectively their neighbor is exploiting their uh the working force. And I'm assuming that also has a backwards effect where um it rebounds within, like that's also reinforcing the Baloch national movement. I'm assuming that that's also basically another reason why the Baloch national movement, especially these days, has been picking up steam. It's because like
Yeah,
their workers in particular have been exploited by Chinese businessmen and Chinese higher ups, basically middlemen. Um, so I'm assuming that's another reason why the Baloch national movement is like uh, picking up steam in Balochistan as well.
yeah, they do talk about their resources being exploited. I mean, it's always been like that. So there's this place in Balochistan called Sui,
Hmm.
and gas reserves were discovered there many, many years ago. So those reserves are now all used up, depleted, and they never used it themselves. The Balochs, all those pipelines just provided gas to all of Pakistan, but not Balochistan. So we've been using that. It's called Sui gas, Sui Northern, Sui Southern. So we've been using their resources forever now, and they
Yeah.
don't get anything. That's why they used to blow up the gas pipelines.
So I'm guessing this is the BLA's work. Like the BLA would blow up
Yeah,
the BLA
yeah,
BLF or BLN. They would blow up the gas pipelines there.
yeah. But now I think the Sui gas reserves are all depleted. Now we're buying very expensive LNG from Qatar and other places.
Mm. I was gonna ask you where do you see Pakistan going, but you clearly do not have the most optimistic
I
look.
don't, I, I don't see it going anywhere. I'd be surprised if it, I mean, stays as a whole. I mean, I see an independent Balochistan and an independent Pashtunistan or something, and I don't know. It's just gonna be Punjab, or maybe there are Sindhi nationalists as well.
Of course.
Yeah, and then this Karachi problem. The Urdu speaking community also has grievances against the Pakistani military. Altaf Hussain, who has an asylum in the UK, so there is a Muhajir problem. The Urdu speaking,
One of my mods is
everyone has
actually
problem.
Muhajir, so one of
Yeah,
my. It's funny. I wish she was in the chat, but she's whatever. She's for whatever reason sleeping on the job. I don't know.
I
Um,
love Karachi, man. I went to Karachi for the first time in my life in March, and I fell in love with the city. It's amazing, and it
good.
yeah, I mean, it's dirty, it's filthy, but it's so lively. The people are super nice, and I don't think there's any other place like that in the country.
There's
Beautiful
is there
people.
another question? So there's hydrocarbon in AJ&K, right? Is that another reason that the in Mirpur, right? Is that why like is that another reason why um is that another reason why the I guess the people in AJ&K are not happy with the government because their hydrocarbon and all of their resources are being exploited?
Yeah, possibly. I think a Kashmiri would answer this better because I haven't been to that area and I haven't talked to a lot of people from that region. I used to talk to them when I was in the UK, so they were because there are a lot of Mirpuris and people from Dadial and Mirpur and Muzaffarabad in the UK, but I haven't had contact with them ever since. So I think, yeah, that could be a possible reason. Everyone has this complaint that our resources are being exploited. It's the same thing with like in Gilgit-Baltistan, they are against the construction that's happening there by military contractors. I mean, it's not good for the environment. It's not good for Hunza, Gilgit, and those places. So yeah, exploitation of resources is a problem. Yes, so
And I'm
it's
guessing
possible.
it affects everyone because It's the military that's doing it, and the military is
Yeah.
basically universally hated by everyone.
Yeah, it is now. It is
I
now.
mean, at
The
least
Punjabis,
thank God for that, right? Like, at least now
yeah,
at least. Okay, I will say this: the nice positive thing, in a weird sense, is that everyone in Pakistan now hates the military.
yeah,
That's a good thing. I mean, that's progress.
it is,
It's
and
better than
we
I
have,
mean, like you have to know the problem in order to figure out how to solve it. So that's
yeah,
better than
maybe,
nothing.
maybe we have to thank Imran Khan for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we should I mean, we should thank Imran Khan for that.
Yeah,
Even though he's
yeah,
also partly responsible for that shit.
yeah. I mean, I don't want any armed struggle in the country. I mean, there is armed struggle in the country from the Baloch side, but I wouldn't want that in other places. Yes, if anyone wants autonomy or a separate province or even a separate country, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm okay with civil rights movement. But when I talk about this, I'm just scared that there will be armed struggle, there will be bloodshed. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I would want peace.
Yeah, I mean, armed struggles are a result of people not being able to achieve it through through political means.
Yeah,
That's
that's why
basic.
sometimes it's just inevitable. Sometimes it's just inevitable.
Yeah, you can't stop. Like people, almost no one ever is just like, "Hey, I want." Hey, just let me. No one's on a whim. Let me just like firebomb this place or whatever, right? No one is saying that,
Yeah,
right? No one is saying
yeah,
that. They're basically just saying like, no, they're being pushed to their absolute limits, right? And that's
yeah,
why they're resorting to these acts, right? That's yeah, they're forced. Yeah, armed revolt is not chosen by the people, but is forced upon them. They don't have any other choice, and that's why the Baloch Liberation Army exists. It's because Pakistan has
yeah,
forced Baloch people into that position.
yeah.
That's why there's armed
That's why I
resistance in
don't.
Kashmir. Like in Kashmir, they've been pushed into that position by the Indian government. They don't have any other choice, right? That's why the Tamils in the island of Sri Lanka have been pushed into that position. They have no other choice, right? So, yeah. What was another
Where
thing?
do you where do you see India and Sri Lanka going?
So India. Okay, so there's some good news coming out of India. So
Okay,
there's a very good shot that Modi might be on his way out. Uh,
okay,
so you wouldn't know it if you looked at the news outside of India, because again, they just don't know anything. They don't know what is going on in India. They don't know how to read Indian politics. They don't know how to read shit, right? So basically, um, effectively, so what we're seeing right now in the Indian elections is we're basically seeing um Modi beginning to panic a lot. Uh and the way you can tell that Modi is beginning to panic is you've probably seen him like go deeper and more openly anti-Muslim. Because that is
yeah,
so even though his party has always been anti-Muslim, even though they've always been this virulently Nazi-like, Modi himself actually has relied on maintaining this image of this sort of composed character that doesn't have his that you know that hasn't lost any of his marbles yet, right? So to speak. So he's relied on this sort of we call it Vishwaguru, right, in India. Like he's relied on the Vishwaguru image of like this world leader that is, wildly respected by everyone. And no, he doesn't engage in the Hindu Muslim divide or anything like that, right? But that is beginning to unravel very very quickly. He's already yeah, he's called Muslims I don't even know how to say that. Guspetia, I think.
Gus Bertier, Gus
Guzberti,
Bertier,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know how to say that. Uh, this is the most Tamil movement I've had on here. This is literally me telling one of my chatters, "Hey, Hindi teriya poda." I don't speak Hindi. Like, he's calling Muslims infiltrators. He's actually, and another way you can tell that he's actually lost his marbles a little bit is he's gone directly after Adani and Ambani.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's gone directly after like his two biggest allies. That's how you know something's off because He has never spoken out against Adani and Ambani before. Yeah, like once he started saying that, I note then I it was sealed in my mind that no, he's not. BJP is not doing okay right now. They're not doing okay. Um, I don't know what the results are going to be, but I mean, long story short, they're absolutely losing seats. There is no shot that they're not. Before going into this election, they were saying we're going to grab 400 seats, above
Yeah,
400 seats. That I would be surprised if they made. I would be shocked if they made it over 300. And people are and people that I know are saying he's not even going to make it to 270, 272. He's not even going to make it to that mark, right? He is terrified that like he and his party are terrified that there's going to be a bloodbath. And it's very likely that there is, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire usually, and it's very obvious that he is not doing okay. He's not. That's why he's resorting to all of this rhetoric. And people are catching on to, and in a similar fashion. So like the biggest issue right now is not the Rama temple that they just built in Ayodhya. No one cares about that. No, the biggest problem, India has like a jobs crisis. Everyone's unemployed at
yeah.
this point. India has a huge jobs crisis. Everyone's unemployed at this point. There's a huge
How,
youth.
how did how did that happen? We thought that India was doing great and the economy was growing and everything.
No, India. No, no, no. So what happened was, India has a jobs crisis for the big. I mean, the biggest reason is that Modi basically legalized corruption in the same way that the U.S. has legalized corruption. So I mean, the like he's basically given it's classic neoliberalism. That's how you have such a jobs crisis, a huge jobs crisis in India. So basically, uh, Indian companies are trying to run pretty lean as much as possible, and so some of the jobs that were India's a huge IT service company. Like, sorry, they're a huge IT service sector. Uh, com-
Yeah,
uh, and a lot of the jobs that were for Indians are no longer happening. And there's also like they're not being given to Indians anymore as much. And there's a lot of competition, especially in the IT sector, and people are just not able to get jobs. Yeah, it's basically the income inequalities. Yeah, the rich are getting richer. That's the growth that you're seeing, right? The income
mm,
inequality is actually worse than it was under the British. It's actually higher than it was under the British. So that's how bad the income inequality is. And there's also inflation in India, just like there is in Pakistan. Not to the same degree, but it is like you are seeing a lot of people struggling to put food on the table in India, just like people are in Pakistan as well. And so those are the two main issues that are really plaguing India right now. And it's very obvious that you can place the blame for a lot of this on the BJP. And you see a lot of people saying that used to be BJP supporters that are no longer BJP supporters. They're saying like, well, Hindu Muslim, this Ram Mandir stuff, that doesn't put food on the table. That doesn't give me a job. That doesn't put food on the table. That doesn't lower the price of tomatoes. That does not lower the price of roti. It is not. So why should I vote for these guys? So I would much rather. And what really helped Congress was they released a manifesto.
yeah,
What really happened was that Congress provided a manifesto, and it's one of the most progressive manifestos I have ever seen. They did a fantastic job, and so it was such a well done job. It was a really well done manifesto that like there was a part like the BJP propaganda mechanism was trying to like shut down the manifesto saying like, oh, they're trying to get rid of reservation, they're trying to get rid of affirmative action for the most marginalized caste in India and give it to Muslims. But then you started seeing people basically saying, no, that's not true. Like here, I like where do they say Muslims? Where do they say Muslims in the manifesto? Where do they say that? Where do they say that? You have people that are like normally you would expect to be hardline BJP voters. You're now beginning to see them directly counter the BJP narrative, right? And you they might not keep their promises, but the conversation started is a good deal. Exactly. And you also have this guy called Dhruv Rathi, who's now making huge airwaves in India. Now everyone's he's managed to basically debate lord his way into Indian politics, and now everyone's listening to him, right? So now he's providing an effective voice, even though I disagree with him on a lot of things. Now he's becoming hugely popular, and he's basically saying like, well, like now he's basically saying, well, BJP is anti-Hindu, or they're anti-India, and this is why. And he's actually like pointing out the sort of arrest that they made. He's also pointed out that BJP just straight up froze Congress's bank. They froze Congress's bank accounts. Congress had crores and crores of money, like billions of dollars, in order to campaign, and they basically made it
Mm.
literally it like they made it impossible for them to campaign, and that pissed people off even more. And another thing that you're beginning to see, another sign that you're seeing that tides are changing, is that they arrested the Delhi chief minister, Arvind Kejriwal.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
arrested him.
What happened with him?
He's out.
I was shocked.
He's on bail.
Yeah, but why did they arrest him?
Some corrupt, like basically some alcohol corruption reason that they trumped up. Basically, like you get, basically like, long story short is like he ran an alcohol scam, but like people kind of liked it because you got free booze. So it's an alcohol scam basically. That's why. I mean, they arrested him. The real reason, the subtext of it is like Arvind Kejriwal was directly opposing the BJP. That's the real reason. And Dhruv Rathi speaks Hindi, so he can directly hit the BJP's core voter base. Yeah, that's another great reason. It's ironic. Like we might unironically, save India. That dude might single-handedly save India from backsliding even further. That's a weird thing to say. Him and Congress might, you know, single-handedly save, BJP, like India, from backsliding even further into fascism. I don't know. But I mean, the thing is, like, I don't have much hope for Congress, even if they get in, anyways, because, uh, I mean, even if Congress gets into power, like you have members of the Congress that are backed by the RSS. So Revant Reddy is a perfect example. He's the chief minister of Telangana right now. He was part of the ABVP, which is the students' union of the RSS. So this is a Hindu nationalist guy in Congress. So I doubt that like Congress is going to do all that much to actually stop the RSS. I don't think they're going to do much to stop the very reasons that we're in the situation right now. I doubt they're going to actually address it. But if Congress does even half of what they promised in the manifesto, I think people will be satisfied to a certain degree. I think people will be happy. That's if they follow through on their promises. And and for God's sake, by the way, Congress better not put Rahul Gandhi as prime minister. Rahul Gandhi better not be prime minister. For God's sake, I do not want him to
Who
be.
then?
I do not want
Who
Rahul
then?
Gandhi.
Who do you want then?
Mallikarjun Kharge, the
Okay.
leader of Congress. Well, one, because a lot of the progressive policies that Rahul Gandhi does not know what the fuck he's doing. He does. Oh, sorry for cursing, by the way. I just noticed that I'm swearing. I apologize for that. I know, like, you're a lecturer and like you're supposed to have more proper
Oh,
language.
no, no, it's completely fine.
No, but Rahul Gandhi. Um, no, but Rahul Gandhi. He just doesn't know what he's doing. He simply doesn't know what he's doing whatsoever. A lot of the stuff that you see coming out of Rahul Gandhi is just people feeding him talking points, especially when it comes to, uh, you know, when it comes to reservation. He does not know. Rahul Gandhi comes from a Brahmin family. He does not know what he's talking about. He does not understand what he's doing. Uh, and he's also not he's a great campaigner. He's very emotional. He knows exactly how to. Yeah, everyone loves Rahul Gandhi because he's hot. Okay, but he doesn't know what he's doing. He cannot, like, he is not remotely qualified to lead India. He is not. I hope I hope that he does not become prime minister. If Congress does make him prime minister, uh, yeah, Rahul Gandhi is a Kashmiri Pandit, like oppressor caste nepo baby. Kharge is a Dalit leader, exactly. Like Kharge comes from one of the most marginalized castes in India. So one, a lot of the Congress manifesto is very much probably inspired by him. He's probably behind a lot of it. And he's also not just his progressive policies, not just his progressive policy positions, but uh his like Congress took back Karnataka in the south, and Karnataka was the foothold of the BJP for a very long time in the south, right? But because of Siddaramaiah, the current CM of Karnataka, as well as Kharge, um, they managed to take back Karnataka. They managed to get rid of BJP from Karnataka, and now BJP's main presence is confined to the coasts. To he managed to salvage some of his dork reputation by doing legwork, but he should not be the face of an INC led government. He is not qualified to be prime minister, not remotely, absolutely not. I genuinely don't think he's qualified. Um, that's so there's some good news coming out of India. I think overall India is like going to be okay for a little bit. I think people are genuinely tired of the Hindutva nonsense. I think people are beginning I think only the most psychotic Hindutva supporters and like the most psychotic like divorced dad energy having uncles, like only those guys are the ones and like the very weirdo like the weird very weirdo uncles and aunties that are not happy with their marriages, that they're the ones that are voting for BJP, right? It's not like your average person. I don't think people I think people are actually genuinely tired of the BJP at this point. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, where do I see Sri Lanka going? Uh oh, where do I begin? So there's Sri Lanka is also supposed to have elections this year. Uh we don't know when. They're like Ranil Wickremesinghe, the current president of Sri Lanka, is saying, "Hey, we should have elections." No one knows when they're going to have elections. They haven't decided on a date yet. They're just like, "Hey, like let's just make an election at some point." No one's decided on a date. They're still deliberating on whether they should have elections. I don't know, maybe this month, maybe next month. We don't know what's going to happen. YOLO, we don't know what's going to happen. As far as the election, as far as the candidates are concerned, they're all trash. They're all garbage. They're all Sinhalese nationalists. It does not matter which one you pick. You're picking poison. It genuinely does not matter. They all suck. The four main parties that are trying to make a go at it right now are the current ruling party, the UNP, Ranil Wickremesinghe's party. It's the oldest party in Sri Lanka. Um, you have Mahinda Rajapaksa's party, the SLPP, that he got thrown out for bankrupting the country, but the rural parts of Sri Lanka might like him still, so he might get like a decent share of the votes. He might get like 30% of the votes. Probably the one, the party that's been really picking up steam is the JVP, the Communist Party. But they're also racists. They're also psychotic racists against the Tamils. A great example of why they're racist is that so during when this tsunami hit in 2005, there was a deal between the Chandrika Bandaranaike government and the LTTE to try and get food and all sorts of all sorts of like sort of basic necessities into the Tamil-dominated parts that were hit by the tsunami. Um, the JVP specifically threatened to walk out of the alliance if they struck a deal to try and sneak aid to try and get aid into the Tamil-dominated parts of the region of Sri Lanka. They basically sabotaged any sort of aid deal that the government was trying to broker with the LTTE at the time. So instead of like actually helping the people that were hit by the tsunami, they specifically told the ruling government at the time, like, if you even think about working with the Tamils to distribute aid in the wake of this, is like 30K people dead, 30,000 people died because of the tsunami, and like 500,000 people were displaced because of the tsunami. And the so-called Communist Party, uh, if the so-called Communist Party in Sri Lanka said, if you even think about helping them, uh, you know, we will walk out of your administration, we'll walk out of your current government. And they staged a protest and they basically staged an entire movement to try and like prevent help from going into the Tamil dominated portions. and they've been hostile to the Tamils. They called like the UNP a betrayal to the nation for brokering, like the UNP in the early 2000s, like Ranil's party, the current president's party. They tried to basically pull in Norway to broker a ceasefire and a ceasefire agreement between the LTTE and the Sri Lankan government. And the so-called communist JVP basically said, "You guys are betraying Sri Lanka by even thinking about brokering peace with the LTTE. No, there is no agreement with the LTTE, right?" So they for even bringing Norway into the discussion for mediation, they basically said, "No, you are traitors to the country." So these guys are now one of the front runner, like these like racists are now one of the front runners, and then the final party that's making a front runner that's also like potentially one of the top two parties is Sajid Premadasa's party, the son of former Prime Minister and President Rana Singh Premadasa. He formed his own party that's an offshoot of the UNP. It's basically the same thing as the UNP. It's the same thing. So it's basically you can either pick, open Sinhalese nationalists. So your options are open Sinhalese, like Sinhalese nationalists that pretend not to be Sinhalese nationalists, but they're neoliberals. Two of them, right? Two parties that are like that. One that are just openly Nazis, like Sinhalese nationalists, and no qualms about it. They're also insanely like neoliberal and have already bankrupted the country. And then the other option are Sinhalese nationalists that pretend to be communists. So those are your options. There are no Sri Lanka is done. Like Sri Lanka is done at this point, right? Sri Lanka can like there are no good leaders in Sri Lanka. And the reason for this is everyone's related to each other. Everyone's
Oh,
related to each other. So the current president of Sri Lanka is the nephew of a former president and prime minister of Sri Lanka, right? And is also a distant cousin of the first prime minister and second prime ministers of Sri Lanka. That's the current president right now. Uh uh the one of the leaders of one of the parties is the son of the former prime minister and president. In 1995, Chandrika Bandaranaike was elected president, and the prime minister at the time, the person she selected to be her prime minister was her mom. Her mom was the prime minister from 1995 to 2000. Her mom was the president. Her mom was the prime minister, and her mom had already served her second term as prime minister, so she was serving her third term as prime minister. And also, Chandrika's dad was prime minister. So the first woman prime minister of Sri Lanka, her husband was the fourth prime minister of Sri Lanka. She was prime minister of Sri Lanka. Her daughter was also prime minister and president of Sri Lanka. And then on top of that, Mahinda Rajapaksa, when he got into power, when he became president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, his younger brother, became the defense secretary, and then Basil Rajapaksa, their younger brother, held some other post. And in 2019, Mahinda Rajapaksa or 2018, Mahinda Rajapaksa becomes prime minister at this point. 2018, 2019. And then in 2019, Gotabaya Rajapaksa becomes president, right? His brother is now the president. The brothers are now the prime minister and the president of the country, right? Like now, like, and then now at this point, their other brother is now the finance minister of the country. And then also, guess what? The Rajapaksa's son, Namal Rajapaksa, is now like the burgeoning leader of their party now.
I thought Pakistan's a mess.
Nah, Sri Lanka is next level insane. Like everyone is related to one another, and uh, like the I even India doesn't have it this bad. Even India does not have it this bad. In India, like Rahul Gandhi is a nepo baby extraordinaire. Like 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 his father, his grandmother, and his great grandfather were all prime ministers of India at one point. And I thought like India doesn't have it as bad, and it's because like everyone is from the same caste. That's the real reason. Everyone is from the same caste. They're all from the Govigama caste. Like, except for the Premadasa family, everyone is all from the exact same caste, the Govigama caste, right? Rahul's mother is a POC. Yeah. Uh, the current Italian. Oh yeah, no. Also, Rahul's grandfather on his mom's side apparently is was in the Italian fascists apparently. So fantastic politics happening in this region. But yeah, Sri Lanka. With India, I feel like there's with India, I feel like there's some level of hope. I think India is too chaotic to backslide into fascism. I think India's main saving grace is regionalism in a weird sense. I think India's main saving grace is this huge presence of regionalism, right? Like it doesn't like um even when BJP was in power, you had like holdouts in the south. You had Kerala and you had Tamil Nadu that were just not having anything that the BJP had to say. You had West Bengal and the TMC. They're awful. They're awful in a multitude of ways. They're basically as close to BJP as you can get without being BJP. TMC is, but the TMC, they, because of like Bengalis having like a level of pride, because of like Bengali regionalist pride, they've managed to basically stall the BJP's entry into Bengal, into West Bengal. Uh, so like it's the huge presence of regionalism that's really staved off the BJP from really taking over India. And I think it's going to remain that way for a little bit. Sri Lanka, on the other hand, has always been messed up since day one. There is no salvaging that country. Like in the sense of like even when I was saying this earlier, even when they threw out Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Mahinda Rajapaksa, like there was just a level of disconnect between the South and the Northeast that like you could tell that like it has been divided for so long, that people have been conditioned a certain way for so long, that if there is any salvaging, it is going to take generations to salvage it. Like it's gone. Like it is not going to happen, right? Like you can it goes it's straight, like it goes straight down to the media as well, right? So for example, this past April, there's a Hindu ceremony called Mahashivaratri. There's a night called Mahashivaratri, right?
Yeah.
And what happened was the Sri Lankan cops arrested. They actually arrested the Tamils that were trying to commemorate Mahashivaratri, right? They were just trying to they were trying to pray, they were trying to worship Shiva that night, right? And they got arrested. 8 people got arrested and they got detained by the Sri Lankan government. For what? I mean, they say the Sri Lankan government says it's unauthorized, but that's complete nonsense, right? They had the paperwork. They had the paperwork ahead of time, right? And then you can see it in the reporting in the Sinhala language news, right? They say it was unauthorized. It was a Buddhist heritage site, and these Tamils were
Mm.
trespassing on this Buddhist heritage site. And then if you look at the Tamil newspapers, they're saying like the paperwork was already done, like everything was approved by the government, everything was approved by we got all the paperwork done, and this temple has evidence of Naga worship dating back 3,000 years. Like this has been a temple that has been around for 3,000 years, and you can see just the clear disparity in reporting on that particular subject. And like, so when it comes to any particular Tamil issue, the Sinhala News never covers it, right? Sinhala News never covers it. It never covers it. It never covers anything that the Tamils are doing. It just does not. It refuses to do it. And the fundamental reason for that is you can basically talk about anything in Sri Lankan news, but you can never challenge the Sinhalese nationalist character of the state. You can never do that. You cannot do that. Otherwise, you get in trouble. There have been Sinhalese journalists that slightly pushed back on the Rajapaksas as the war was happening, and they got murdered. They got murdered outright in cold blood for saying like, "Hey, like you guys are committing war crimes against the he also was not pro Tamil, for the record. He wasn't that pro Tamil either, but he like for just slightly pushing back against Rajapaksa, he got killed for it. Lasantha Vikramatunga was his name. Sinhalese guy. Pragita Negligota, like I mentioned earlier, he was disappeared by the state for, you know, he was disappeared by the state for simply questioning or simply doing investigating into the Sri Lankan state's use of chemical weapons against the civilian population, this Tamil civilian population. He got arrested because he got disappeared because it turns out there's likely evidence that they used white phosphorus against Tamil civilians. There's evidence to suggest that the Sri Lankan government definitely used white phosphorus against Tamil civilians because uh, there were signs among some of the corpses of white phosphorus, right? And for investigating that usage, he got murked. He got disappeared by the state. Turns out the Sri Lankan government also may have used cluster bombs purchased from Pakistan, Ukraine, and Russia. Uh, Also, Pakistan gave multi-barrel rocket launchers in like the year 2000. And the reason like you don't hear much about this is because Sri Lanka's, I guess the difference between Israel and Palestine and Sri Lanka is that in Sri Lanka's case, you have countries that are normally at odds with each other. So you have India and Pakistan, China and the US, right? Israel and Iran, countries that are normally, geopolitically at odds with each other, taking the same side. Right? Now, is it because they've all become friends? No, it's not because of that at all. It's because they're trying to outcompete one another for influence in Sri Lanka. And it has nothing to do with what Sri Lanka is producing. It has nothing to do with what Sri Lanka has to offer in terms of like production, agriculture, so on and so forth. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with where Sri Lanka is. It has always been that way. Sri Lanka, out of all the countries in the subcontinent, has the longest colonial history. 400 years of colonial history. Sri Lanka has the longest colonial history of any country in the region, right? They were colonized by the Portuguese, they were colonized by the Dutch, and then finally they were colonized by the English, right? By the British. But when the Portuguese and the Dutch colonized them, guess what portions they controlled? They controlled the coasts, which were the most vital regions of the country, because Sri Lanka is a glorified aircraft carrier. That's basically what Sri Lanka is, right? It was an aircraft carrier back then. It's a great It was back then. It was a great. I mean, now it's a great aircraft carrier, and back then it was a great port, right? It was a great port for boats. Sri Lanka for a very long time, it was used to check India, right? The British specifically used Sri Lanka as a method, as a way to check India, right? Because especially when the Indians started rebelling, it was actually starting in the south, right? The south was the one that really kicked the region of India that kicked off the anti-British revolutions, right? And it was during the Polygar Wars. So Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism was basically developed by the British. It was developed not necessarily by the British, but they created the conditions that nurtured Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism, that allowed Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism, and they preferred mostly Sinhalese, like what we would now call Sinhalese people to be in power, right? Sinhalese upper caste, upper class people to be in their administration. So that's so the Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism, what we now know as Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism, that's not new either. It's just like Zionism in that it's a recent thing. It was also developed by Europeans. It was also developed I mean, it wasn't developed in Europe, but it was developed by Europeans in this case, right? So basically, like, uh, the thing is, like, the unitary Sri Lankan state that we see right now, where like there are no rights afforded to any of the minorities, whether it be Muslims, Tamils, so on and so forth. There's no autonomy given to the Northeast. That was a British setup. That was particularly done by the British. This is this unitary Sri Lankan state is a vestige of British rule in Sri Lanka. And basically what we're seeing right now is actually the whole conflict is directly a consequence of the British. It wasn't, so it was, yes, it was divide and rule. It was divide and conquer. It was directly uh, basically, according to what Bhashana had to say about this, he basically said that Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism was basically cooked up wholesale by the British in order to, because again, the northeastern parts, with the Tamil dominated parts of the island, they had a live cultural connection to southern India, right? Because they
Yeah.
spoke the same language. They spoke the same language as Tamil Nadu. The Muslim the the Muslims are also Tamil speakers. I mean, not all Muslims, but like the Moors specifically are Tamil speakers, right? They speak Tamil. So they had a live cultural connection back to the mainland of India. They had a live cultural connection back to Tamil Nadu. But the Sinhalese, even though they come from India, right? Even though they come from India originally, right? They have since like lost that connection a long time ago, and they've basically become like they've become the native uh you know people, like they become the overwhelming native people of Sri Lanka in a sense, right? They originally came from India, but they came to the southern parts of Sri Lanka. They came from West Bengal or Odisha. They came to the southern parts of the country, and now Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism plays off of three particular things. One, that the Sinhalese, in the overall subcontinental context, are a minority, right? Because if
Yeah.
you look at, because one, they're a religious minority in the overall subcontinental context. Because if you go look at India, Pakistan, Nepal, Nepal maybe not so much, but you look at over the subcontinent overall, and you go region by region, you're you're mostly it's going to be Hindus and Muslims, right?
Yeah.
But these guys are Buddhists. They're Buddhist majority. And there's no, and the Sinhala language, even though it is related to Hindi, it is related to Urdu, it has been so heavily Dravidianized that if I were to have a Sinhalese guy speak to you in Sinhala, you wouldn't understand what he's saying, because it's been so heavily morphed over the years that it's in this uncanny valley that no one really understands what they're saying, right? Other Indo-Aryan speakers don't understand what they're saying, and Dravidian speakers don't understand what they're saying, right? So they're kind of like on their own in a sense. So Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism kind of like it plays off of that idea of like, hey, we're the only people that exist, and we need a homeland, right? So it plays off of that. That's number one, right? And then the other thing is, so the British, when they came to Sri Lanka, they actually turned a bunch of Sinhalese like peasants into landless people. So so the British did inflict some harm upon the Sinhalese overall, right? So a lot of the justification for the anti-Tamil policies of the Sri Lankan government is like the similar to how Zionists weaponized the Holocaust, right? These guys, Sinhalese Buddhist nationalists, they weaponize the colonialism. They weaponize the colonial violence that was inflicted upon them. And they make claims, like weird claims, like the Tamils were privileged. They were always privileged. They were in British administrations and stuff like that. And there were Tamils
Mm.
that were also handpicked by the British to be part of their administration, sure, right? But the overwhelming majority of the ruling class was Sinhalese Govigama, right? It was always Sinhalese, right? That was the majority of the ruling class, right? That was always the majority of the ruling class, it was misdirected at the Tamils, the Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism, right? It was always like basically so the the problems that Sri Lanka has, it is as systemic as basically it Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism is as intrinsic to the Sinhalese to the Sri Lankan state, excuse me, as Zionism is to the Israeli state. That is how intrinsic it is, right? There is no Sri Lankan state without Sinhalese nationalism. There is no such thing. They are one and the same thing, right? That is particularly why, you know, the provincial councils, which is basically like I guess the legislative assemblies that exist in India and the legislative assemblies that exist in Pakistan, they had to be forced on Sri Lanka. The only reason the provincial councils exist in Sri Lanka is because India threatened to go to war with Sri Lanka. That's the only reason they exist. And because India threatened to go to war with Sri Lanka, and they said, listen, if you know, and they basically forced a deal where Sri Lanka accepted an amendment to their constitution. Right? They believe that the land was given to the Sinhala by the Buddhas. Yes, that's there is no Sri Lankan state without Sinhalese nationalism. That's not a thing. That doesn't exist. It is intrinsically Sinhalese nationalist in the same way that the Israeli state is directly is Zionist. There is no separation of the two, right? So opposing so the one state solution in Palestine is a direct counter to the two state solution that the colonial powers have set up, right? That's why people advocate for the one state solution in Palestine. The two state solution, where the northern and eastern coasts get one portion of the island and the rest have their own, that is also a direct counter to the colonial state structure. That is also a direct counter to the colonial state structure that was set up in Sri Lanka. So that's why people like that's why I personally think like there is no other way for Sri Lanka other than a two-state solution. There is no way. Sri Lanka is not going to get better until the people of the Northeast have their own state. It's just not going to happen. It is not going to happen because right now the way it works is that the Sinhalese working class has been made out by the state to be the lumpen proles. They've basically been made out by the Sri Lankan state to be the class that can be weaponized against minorities, right? So the thing that's hampering actual working class solidarity, the thing that's actually hampering working class rights in Sri Lanka is one, the state. The state is itself counter-revolutionary, and second, it's basically the state. The state itself is being a counter-revolutionary force in the state in this particular uh, scenario.
And that makes much more sense now with the colonial history in that context. Now I understand a lot more. I think I've learned a lot today.
Yeah, no, thanks. I talk about Elam, I talk about Sri Lanka all the time. Again, like I talk about it from the like just I think the way Bashna explained to me like why he's pro I guess he's pro two state solution, that makes a lot more sense to me than like it's easy to just say, oh, the Tamils have a right to their own state, right? Obviously the right to self-determination is a basic thing, right? But if you can basically explain like, hey, listen, two state solution in Sri Lanka is actually a disruption of the colonial state structure, I think that's a lot easier to pick up, right? I think that's a lot easier because everyone's like, fuck the British. Everyone's like, screw the British. Well, the Sri Lankan state, as it's set up right now, is directly a vestige of the British state structure. And basically, the way it worked was so back then, there's a word called rata, right? In Sinhala, which means country, right? Nation, right? And back in those days, like in the kingdom days, what people were saying their rata was, it was not what we call the Sinhala rata. It's not the Sinhalese country. It's not Sri Lanka, right? But when the British came, they needed to unify the entire country. And in order to unify the entire country, they had to unify it in terms of administration. They had to unify it in terms of infrastructure. They had to unify it in terms of ruling population as well. So Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism was actually a thing that was literally cooked up by the British to basically wipe down their old associations to their old ratas. Because at the time, before the British completely conquered Sri Lanka, there was a Kandyan kingdom in the center, in the highlands of the country, right? So they came and basically wiped out whatever remaining loyalties they had to like the Kandyan kingdom and the different kingdoms that were there, the Anuradhapura kingdom and whatnot. They wiped all of those associations and they said, no, your Ratta now is this island called Sri Lanka. It's the and your Ratta, your Jati is the Sinhala Jati, right? That is your association now. And they did it through the comprador ruling class of Sri Lanka. So it's basically like supporting a two-state solution on the island is a direct counter to the colonial state structure that remains on the island. I know I'm like talking a lot. I've been on like
No,
I've been on like a long-winded rant, but that's basically like what's going on like in Sri Lanka. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, I don't see it improving anytime soon. Like I don't like the structure, the problems that are there are still structural. They're still systemic, and no one's learned their lesson. Like there's been no justice for the Tamils in regards to the forced disappearances. There's been no justice on that front. You still have Sinhalese farmers that are Sinhalese settlers that are like attacking Tamil farmers. Like, for example, like I think it was last year or something, they literally put grenades in the livestock of Tamil farmers and they literally blew up the jaws of the cows. So they literally maimed cows. They maimed livestock just to intimidate the Tamils. Uh, so yeah, like I did this. The structures are like, and to give you an idea of how complicit everything is, right? Iran. So I talked about the Mahawali project, right? So
Yeah.
not directly the systems where they're affecting the Tamils, but Iran is one of the main patrons of one of the systems within the Mahawali project. They're one of the main financiers. So that's how Iran's complicit in all this. Saudi Arabia gave money Saudi Arabia gave money to the Mahawali project a long time ago, right? Israel was one of the main uh, collaborators on the Mahawali project. The U.S. directly gave money and they directly collaborated with the Jayawardena government on the Mahawali project. India, when they went into Sri Lanka, they directly committed war crimes against the Tamils through the Indian peacekeeping forces, and they directly. I mean, they bungled it so badly that even the Sri Lankan government was pissed off, and Ranasinghe Premadasa, the president, started arming the LTTE against the Indians. That's how
Wow.
badly they bungled it. That's how badly the Indians bungled it, right? And because of that, because the Indians and Sri Lankans had like had a weirdly strained relationship, Pakistan stepped in. And also, even before that, when Pakistan was committing the Bengali genocide, Sri Lanka, because India closed off their airspaces, Sri Lanka stepped in to help. The Pakistani military used Colombo Katunaika Airport as their refueling base. So Sri Lanka helped Pakistan basically commit a genocide against the Bengalis. So it was a two-way street, right? Um, China obviously has, like, towards the end of the war, they became the largest financiers of the conflict. They became the largest financiers of the Sri Lankan government, and they also contributed, what was it, $500 million to the Mahawali project, right? They were one of the biggest financiers of the Sri Lankan government, and on top of that, like countries you wouldn't expect, like Slovakia sold weapons to Sri Lanka. Argentina sold 4 jets to Sri Lanka. Like this is a problem for everyone. This is actually like this is everyone's problem because their government literally sold. I can probably point to a country on a map and I can probably tell you like, "Oh yeah, your government is also responsible for this." Like that's how bad it is. I can basically like there's stuff that Malaysia even did. Okay, there's stuff that Malaysia and Nepal did too, right? Like
The thing
there's,
is, no one knows about it. No one knows these
but
things.
that's precisely why.
Yeah. I would really want people to know. I mean, while we were talking, I was like, I should invite more Pakistanis to this broadcast.
No shot. They did what? Wait, what was that a reference to? Wait, what did? Wait, nerd. What is? There's someone in my chat that said no shot. They did what? Yeah, Sri Lanka helped. Yeah, Sri Lanka helped Pakistan commit the anti-Bengali. Yeah, they did that. They helped. It was Sri Lanka. Yeah, they backed the LTTE against the IPKF. Yes, yes. Roger. Yes, yes. It was so bad. It was so bad. I mean, we're not gonna talk about it. No, nerd. We're not talking about it. We're not gonna talk about the IPKF in this documentary. That's not gonna happen. That India's India's stuff, like India's involvement in Sri Lanka is a totally different video that we have to make. That's complete nonsense. It's not spoilers, but like there's stuff that like every country has done. Like every country is involved in this some way or another, right? Every country, like every you can point to it on a map, right? right?
I'll be waiting for the documentary.
Yeah, we're working on it still. We'll get to it. But we're also like we also want to we're probably going to definitely release it, and we're going to put subtitles for it, and we're looking for subtitle. I'm not sure your doc will be allowed in India. No, it will. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, who cares? Like, if not, just use VPN or something. I don't know. But yeah, like Pakistan has like both India and Pakistan in a bid to basically outcompete with each other back to genocide against the Tamils in Sri Lanka. So that is weird. I mean, not weird. It makes sense, but genocide is a business, and like the reason that the reason it's I mean the reason it's important is that like your government is involved in this. Like that's the main reason. Like like imagine if like it's a wild situation where basically Iran and Israel are basically working on the same side.
Yeah,
That's a wild thing, right?
it is. It is.
Like and it's because like they're trying to compete against one another for influence. But yeah, I don't know
Crazy.
how much longer you want to go. I think if you have to go soon, that's fine. But
Yeah, I might have to leave now. It's 10 o'clock here.
yeah, but no, thank you, Donnie, for coming on. I
No,
appreciate it.
no, thank you for having me. I really learned a lot, and it was a
I mean,
great
so did the
learning
chat. I
experience.
mean, I also learned a lot. So thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, let's do it again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Take it easy.
yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.